have this conversation on a regular basis because what you hear out there in the mainstream or even in the gold camps is, they're not going to confiscate bullion. They're not going to do that. Well, that's hopium. That's what that is. Let's live on this hopium that they won't do what they've done historically. But for me personally, and having lived through it and having my Uncle Al that actually showed me the benefit of having the pre-33 gold coins and the fact that he got to hold maybe 3,000 of them when it was illegal to hold more than 5 ounces, that made a huge impact on me. But so does all the research that I do. So this is part 3. I don't know that necessarily they're in the proper order, but I want to show you the thought process behind the beginning of this. And this is a big, huge reason. Next in part 4, we're going to talk about the laws. But this is a big, huge reason why I'm telling you that personally, here's my piece of bullion. I don't buy this for myself. I buy this because it has a lot less chance of being confiscated. So you think they wouldn't do it again? All right, well, let's look at some history. This is an excerpt from The Economic Consequences of the Peace by John Maynard Keynes. Now, he is the father of Keynesian economics, which is what this whole system is based on. So these are his words, not mine. And I'm sure you've heard these before. But by a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate. Inflation is confiscation, secretly and unobserved, an important part of the wealth of their citizens. It is a way to confiscate the wealth from the many to the few. And while the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some. There is that wealth transfer, and we've certainly seen it and experienced it. So I just want to strongly point out, from the father of the current monetary and economic system that we're in, even he admits that inflation is a form of confiscation. There are so many ways that they do this. But if they say inflation, do you think, they're confiscating my wealth? No, I think that because I've been doing this on some level my entire life. But you've been trained. First, we knew in the 70s inflation was a really bad thing. But suddenly, after 2008, it became the savior. No, who does it save? It doesn't save the public. Let's move on, because this is the analysis from the Federal Reserve Act from the Fed, and you need to be very conscious of this because they're doing it again. So I go back in history to show you what's happening today. Elasticity in note issues is provided by a new form of currency. Well, right now, in this currency, we have limitations on how many zeros are after the point, right? In the new currency, maybe we won't have those limitations, right? It's a more elastic new form of currency. Yay! But this is how they kick this system off. Reserve Bank to maintain reserve in gold or lawful money or 35% of deposits. Fractional reserve system. That's what they set up. Gold reserve against notes in circulation must be 40%, which is likely where a lot of people are thinking that if you have a 40% gold backing behind the new money, that it'll create that stability. Zimbabwe tried that, except it wasn't backed. It was actually just pegged to the price, so they could do that overnight revaluation. But this is when they actually legalized and how they legalized the inflation experiment. It's legal now, but I want to show you, and this is, as you guys know, this is my favorite chart. I've even done something where I just talked about this chart. Go back and find it. We can put the link in there. But this is the purchasing power chart of the consumer dollar from the Fed. You see it all the time. 1913, there's your dollar. But look at this. Huge 50% drop off in purchasing power. Boom, boom, boom. Out of the gate. Why? I'll tell you why. because prior to 1913, this little itty bitty 20th of an ounce of gold backed a $1 bill. After they instituted the Federal Reserve, this itty bitty 20th of an ounce now backed $2.40. So they printed all of that money, and look at this massive decline in purchasing power. Cut to 1971, right? At that point, we still had 28 cents out of the original dollar's worth of purchasing power. But going all the way back to the 70s when we went on this pure debt-based system, well, guess what? We've talked about this before. What was the average inflation rate between 1970 and 2024? It was 4%. And I have a negative rate calculator in here. I want you have access to all of these links. So take this and play with it. You're going to see what this means. But 4% on average of your purchasing power wealth has been inflated away through money printing. That okay with you? Because officially, we've got those 3 cents left. I know you've heard me say that, but I'd also like to point out the zero. So the central bank is telling you what the true value of this stuff is. It's zero. Plus, it's used in one place, right? You guys have all seen my $10 trillion, wherever it is, Zimbabwe note. I'm a trillionaire, but I can't even buy eggs with it. And I'm sure you guys, some of you might be unfortunately having trouble buying eggs. Backyard chickens are great. I want you to think about your food security. But what was the end result of this experiment? Well, you work for less and less over time. I've shown you those tables. We'll talk about it some more. You pay higher taxes on the inflated incomes and asset values. So it's genius. It's evil genius. I'm not going to lie. But they create the inflation and then they tax you on that inflation. So guess what? Taxation is a form of confiscation. You are forced to take on more risk in an attempt to keep pace with inflation. When we were on the gold standard, you didn't have to do that. And you can create your own gold standard and your own silver standard just by converting your fiat into these tangible metals, which we can help you do at Zang Enterprises, by the way, because we get that question all the time. Okay, so I'm sorry. And you may have a completely different opinion. You've got all the links to all of my work. Do your own due diligence. If you have a different opinion than I do at the end of it, rock and roll hoochie coo. I will support your right to have that opinion. But hopium as a strategy, I'm sorry, you guys, it doesn't work. Hopium does not work. So I like to know, what if I'm right and what if I'm wrong? It is very hard for me to believe, since in this country, gold has been confiscated 3 times. Okay, last time was 33. And you've got the spot market pushing people away from it. You've got the crypto market diverting cash when people are trying to protect themselves. All of those manipulations are forms of confiscation. Do you really think that after they've pretty much gotten all of your wealth and the last little bit is the gold in the IRAs? Do you really think they're going to stop there and go, oh no, we've gotten enough, you get to keep it? No, I don't think so. That's not history. History shows the last grab will come, and you need to be in proper position. And even if you are absolutely sold on bullion, diversify your portfolio. Make sure, because there's gold and then there's gold. Make sure that you are covered. What if you're right? What if you're wrong? How about doing something that does not matter whether you're right or wrong? I don't know. Just a thought. That's my personal preference. But I want to talk to you and show you in their own words that price stability is not about prices remaining the same. So this is from the Bank for International Relations. I'm sorry, I have a little cold. My brain is a little foggy. The BIZ is Bank for what is that? I forgot. Bank for International Settlements.
Yes.
Okay. Like, oh my God, I know that. So here, I wanted you to see this from their own mouths, right? This is from the BIZ, the Bank for International Settlements, which is the central banker's central bank. And what they're saying here, Paul Volcker, Alan Greenspan. Paul Volcker has been credited with bringing down the high inflation of the 70s, which was actually brought on by changing from a gold-backed system to a debt-based system and all the new money they printed for that. And Alan Greenspan was Sir Alan. My mother used to love him, and she used to say to me all the time, "But Lynn, don't you think Greenspan is smarter than you? Don't you think he's smarter?" And I'd always say to her, well, I certainly hope he's smarter because he sure has a whole lot more power than I do. But if he actually believes the garbage coming out of his mouth, then no, I don't think he's smarter than I am. He didn't believe the garbage coming out of his mouth. He said one thing before he became central bank chair and another thing after to try and repair or save his legacy. Anyway, I'm sorry, I digress. So Paul Volcker and Alan Greenspan famously defined price stability as a situation in which expectations of generally rising or falling prices over a considerable period are not a pervasive influence on economic financial behavior. In academic jargon, this is an instance of rational inattention. And the way they look at it, this is perception management, people. That's what I'm showing you. This is a formal U.S. government plan, thanks to President Reagan. He's the one that introduced it. So what is rational inattention? It's the cost of neglecting low inflation is lower than the cost of including it in wage negotiations or pricing decisions. So price stability is really about you not asking for higher wages and or not changing your purchasing decisions. They want that inflation to be low enough that you willingly just hand over your time, your work, your wealth. And you don't realize that what they're really doing through inflation and manipulation, perception management, is robbing you, confiscating your wealth. That's why, look, I can't sit here and tell you 100% they're going to confiscate in an overt fashion. But what I'm trying to show you in all of these series is that they've been confiscating your wealth your entire life. They're not going to stop at the last minute. As long as you believe and trust those central bankers, this con game continues to go on. I think that's changing, though. I think that's starting to change quite rapidly. That's the problem with rapid inflation. People notice that more, and they do ask for more wages, and they do complain about the prices in their purchasing decisions. The central bank's anti-inflation credentials and credibility can help to hardwire such behavior. Central banks don't fight inflation. They create the inflation. Their job is to regulate the rate and speed of that inflation, and they do that with interest rates. You continue to believe them. Are they credible? To me, they're not credible. But then again, I read this stuff all the time. And I think it's going to be tested again coming up because the tariffs went into play and we're going to see inflation. How long will they be in play? How much is that going to impact? We're in a trade war. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. But the true cost of being an American, how much taxes you'll pay before you die. I think this is really, really interesting because do you think of taxation as confiscation? And we didn't really have that level of taxation until the Federal Reserve was instituted. There are so many different ways that they tax you. They would like you to think, well, it's income taxes, okay. It's auto taxes, it's sales taxes, it's property taxes. But there are tons and tons of hidden taxes. This is not a conclusive list. All of this, we think that we're just being taxed on our income. One level of taxation? No, look at it. There are multiple layers of taxation because that's the way governments generate their income, is through fees, but primarily through taxation. And the largest share are individual taxations. And guess what? Sorry, guys. Taxation is a form of confiscation. Oh, they wouldn't do that in the face and in the evidence that they are doing it to you. But if you were paid in sound money, physical gold, physical silver, you've seen this before, 913 average wage, spot gold, 1971 average wage, and February 7th, the average wage over 59,000 when it was only 10,571. Now, the normal person not realizing all of the taxation and all of the inflation would go, well, I would much rather have $59,384 than $10,500. Well, because we get blinded by nominal confusion. We get blinded by numbers. And this is why I'm always telling you, do not get blinded by numbers. I have a $10 trillion Zimbabwe note. I can't buy anything with it. And oh, by the way, how much do you buy when you go to the grocery store with this $100 bill? Not a whole lot, right? But spot gold and spot silver during those periods of time, if you had been paid, there was a lot of gains that happened between 1913 and 1971 for the public. A lot. So if you have been paid in gold in 1913, that's 38.7 ounces. Do you realize you are getting paid less today than the average worker in 1913? But in 1971, when we went to the debt-based system, I think the public was just doing too well. No. And they did start to shift risk, and there's so much stuff around that, but let's just kind of stay here. 248.7 ounces of gold in 1971. So you had a lot of gains. The public had a lot of gains between 1913 and 1971. And they took advantage, and they had some good productivity. But between 1971 and 2025, not only did those gains evaporate, as I said, look at this, 20.57 ounces versus 38.7 ounces in 1913. My friends, at $59,384 for the average wage, you are being paid less than you were in 1913. Why is that okay with you? That's ridiculous. And you see something very similar in silver. But if you never got a raise and were paid what you were in 1971 in terms of ounces of silver, that's over $700,000 a year. Well, that kept pace with inflation, didn't it? And then some. And spot silver, you see a very similar thing happen. If you were paid the same amount in spot silver, you'd be at $219,754.84. Sound money is referred to as sound money because it is above all central bankers and above all governments. This stuff, you got to have a government legalize it, and it's about theft. This stuff, this is about savings. You can make this choice, but I'm telling you right now, you need to become your own central banker. And at Zang Enterprises, we have that sound money strategy that nobody else has because I spent years and years and years and years and years and years and years working on that, developing it, studying it, testing it. Nobody else has it. Period. End of discussion. Don't you need a plan? because we all need a plan. The government has a plan. They've been executing the plan. And these days, I'm sorry, there's so many moving parts. Do you think nothing could go wrong? Do you think nothing is going wrong? Because even in terms of food, and we know, all right, President Trump, are you going to put tariffs on food? That's going to drive the cost of food up dramatically. 1913, that food basket, in terms of spot silver, food was up over 2,300%. Spot silver on 2.7, it's actually probably pretty much, silver is pretty much where it is right now. That's up over 3,200%. It maintains your ability to buy the same goods and services. That's why it's a foundation of the barterable part of your portfolio. But what about spot gold? And remember, these are all manipulated numbers anyway. That was up. Well, it's more than that now. Let's say 14,000%. So not only does it maintain your ability to buy the same goods and services, but it actually expands your wealth base. That's critical in this day and age. I'm telling you, you better be protected. Sound money prevents that inflation and that confiscation. You still think there won't be confiscation? I don't know. What about this article? The government says money isn't property, so it can take yours. Really? What is this about? Remember, you've got all the links. Money, this is a quote, money is not necessarily property for constitutional purposes. The government's brief declared, putting the very idea of property in square quotes. Reading at my desk, I practically fell out of my chair. The Department of Justice gave 3 rationales for confiscation, all packed into a doorstopper of a footnote. The government creates money, so you can't own it. Well, no, you don't. What is this? What is it? Pull out a bill, right? What does it say across the top? Oh, Federal Reserve note, right there. Federal Reserve note. What's a note? It's a debt instrument. That's what a note is. So no, you don't own it. The government can tax your money, so you don't own it. We already talked about taxation. And 3, this is from the government. This is from the government. This is not from me or anybody else's opinion. Okay, the Constitution allows the government to spend money for the general welfare. So they can take it away from you and spend it however they want. They claim that fiat currency is a legal fiction that the government can as easily destroy as create. And look, I mean, there are over 4,800 currencies that do not exist anymore. Even this is a Confederate bill, right? Can you use this anymore? No, it has no value, right? I mean, this is a Florida Tallahassee. States used to create money. It's just a collectible. You can't use it anymore. So and we saw that in 2016 when India demonetized, 85% of all of the money that was out there? So if a government can say, this is money, guess what? They can also say, oh, no longer money. But they can't do that with gold. They can't do that with silver because it's used in every single sector of the global economy. That's why it's above governments and central bankers. They have not been able to duplicate this in any lab. And there's the broadest base of functionality and the broadest base of demand. And a lot of people think that younger people, well, look, they've grown up with all of this technology. I guarantee you they have a much higher level of comfort with it than me. I have history. They have youth, right? However, this is the part that gives me hope because rich young Americans are ditching the stormy stock market. There's more to that, but we'll talk later. Here are the alternative assets they're banking on instead. Guess what? The Bank of America survey revealed that among wealthy young investors, 45% own gold as a physical asset, and another 45% are interested in holding it. I'm telling you right now, there is no fever like gold fever. And while I may lead the charge because I lived through 1971 and have been studying this stuff forever, it is the younger generation that's going to carry this banner further. But I'm going to tell you, it is critically important that you do not delay. You call us, you get your sound money strategy, not just put together. That's the first step. What are your goals? Then there's gold and there's gold and there's silver and then there's silver. How much do you need? We can figure all of that out to protect assets that you have, to protect your current standard of living, and to put you into a position where you can expand your wealth base. How about having the wealth transfer your way? I mean, what a concept. And we can do that. Just become your own central bank. And we need to create that global movement. We need sound money in our system once again. That's what I'm fighting for. And we can't do it in one little place. We have to do it all over the world. So join us in building this community on a global basis. Because I 100% know, I know this, that together we can make a positive difference for a lot of people. I know we can do this. So please, we've got to spread the word. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. Give us a like. Let's have this conversation, because the more chatter that we have in the comments, the more that YouTube will pick up this algorithm and pick up this information and distribute it. So help us get this knowledge distributed. And until next we speak, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.